creature first?
I did. Jumped around behind the tree and he's just like freaking out, looking at the sky. He's just like, what is that up there? What is it? It's like a giant bird or something. It's like this bird kind of thing, flying, like soaring though. Like it wasn't like flapping. We heard the dogs and stuff, and the animals, all the pigs and the horses and stuff or whatever, just go crazy. Started making lots of noise. That was probably my best guess on there.
15 or 20 feet in terms of
wingspan.
Okay.
And then we saw this huge, great big, what I said, bird at that time, take off. I thought it was just a bird, But anyway, it was huge. And flew right back alongside, and we got a perfect side view of the approximate same wing spread as what my airplane did.
This is no joke. Where did this sketch come from? It was drawn by an eyewitness. About 3 years before this photo was taken, this little girl, Patty Carson, saw the flying creature in about the year 1965. I'm Jonathan Whitcomb. The observation of the apparent pterosaur in 1965 was in those seconds while it was standing in tall grass in Australia. She and her husband decided to be anonymous, so I'll call them Mary and John. Here's part of what she told me. Whatever people may think, the fact remains that my husband and I both saw that creature. My husband, being a scientist, took in things from the sighting that I was far too amazed, stunned, to take in. We have speculated much on what it was that we saw and still do not come up with answers, but we do know that it was definitely a living creature, 100% alive, and I would swear that before God himself. It was very big. We would not have been able to see what it was if the ground lighting had not lit its underside. We could clearly see it coming and stood rooted to the spot watching it as it drew closer. As it came to a point to the right of us and above, the ground lighting lit it up, and that was a stunning moment for the both of us. I was so totally shocked, amazed, awed, and bewildered at the same time. This was completely out of the reality I had grown up to know. And I can tell you in all honesty, it has changed me. I never believed these things existed until that night. The following is part of what the husband told me. We had been walking in the evening and had just crested a hill and were on the downslope along a major thoroughfare. In the distance, I perceived an object in the sky. At this point, it was rather indistinct, and wondering what it might be, I watched it as it approached. Soon I was able to determine that it was some sort of flying creature, and my first thought was that it must be some very large bird. Its progress had brought it closer, and while its shape did resemble a bird, I thought it must be the largest bird I had ever witnessed. It had reached our position and was about 250 or 300 feet above us and slightly inland. The area was moderately well lit, and I saw that it seemed to be a light reddish tan color. It did not appear to be covered with feathers, but had a leathery texture. Soon after it passed us, it flew over a more brightly lit sports area, which highlighted even more the leathery appearance, also bringing more detail to view. The wings were the most definite leathery feature. They were shaped in a triangular arch, similar to a very elongated shark fin. The body also still appeared leathery, though textured, as though possibly covered with fine hair or small scales, the distance preventing any finer observation other than that it was a slightly different texture than the wings. I estimated the size to be in excess of 30 foot, possibly as great as 50 foot. Those are the words of a scientist, a man who did not mention any words like flying dinosaur or pterodactyl or Pterosaur, but whose description of this flying creature makes it obvious to me that it was no bird or bat known to science. We begin with a sighting of an apparent pterosaur seen in 1993 in Durham, North Carolina. I now quote the eyewitness, Dane Simmons. Me and two of my friends saw one at different times. I was alone driving my car and looked out my sunroof to see what I think was a pterodactyl. Huge bat-like wings, 2 feet in the back, and long pointed beak and back of head. It was so big I could easily make out the features. I estimate the wingspan was like 10 to 15 feet. Also, two of my friends were fishing. They said it was huge, 10 to 15 foot wingspan. My sighting has haunted me ever since. I know what I saw. Before getting into the second sighting report of a living pterosaur in North Carolina, please take these shocking encounters in the United States in context with 2 sightings in Cuba. Petty Carson saw a large Ropen at Guantanamo Bay in about 1965, and the U.S. Marine Eskin Kun saw 2 apparent pterodactyls there in 1971. By the way, the Ropen is a long-tailed modern pterosaur, not yet officially acknowledged in Western science as of the end of the year 2018. Many eyewitnesses call this flying creature a pterodactyl, or a prehistoric bird, or a dragon, or a dinosaur bird. My associates in cryptozoology call this shocking animal Ropen. For more information about the 2 sightings in Cuba, see the video The Girl Who Saw a Flying Dinosaur, which is also on this channel, Protect Animal Life. In 2018, I got an email from an eyewitness of 2 apparent pterosaurs in Kernersville. He estimated their wingspan was 18 to 20 feet. That was in about the year 2003 when the man was working at a Walmart. At about that time, another man and his girlfriend saw what looked like a pterosaur flying over Durham. This was about 10 years after the other sighting in Durham. Here's part of what he told me in his own words. I noticed an object gliding silently from the direction of the freeway passing overhead. Had a wingspan of 17 to 23 feet. I could see an outline that was more or less triangular. My first instinct was that it was a hang glider, but it was midnight with nowhere high enough to launch from for miles around. Less than 2 minutes later, it flew back from the direction it had come. We were both astounded. This thing was massive, soundless, triangular, and dark-colored, soaring slowly into the forest at midnight. My girlfriend can back me up on it 100%, and in fact saw it again years later in a nearby part of town. She's a scientist now and not prone to lying about matters of this sort.
I went to turn onto a highway, and as soon as I took a right and started going down the road, I looked up and I saw a large flying creature. And it immediately drew my attention because its wings were not flapping like a bird's would. It was rolling kind of like a stingray in the ocean. So what happened was, as I was traveling north, it appeared over my shoulder in the windshield here of the car, and it was flying in this direction. As it was doing that, I decided to keep an eye on it, and I was so curious as to what it was. So I was going the same direction it was, and it eventually moved over towards a tree line about 100 yards off to my left, and I saw it start to dive, and so I continued to watch it. And it slowly dove down and landed at the end of the tree line. And then when it went to dive down by the tree line, I noticed that there was a long tail with a bulb at the end of it, and I kept double checking to make sure, and I'm like, that has to be a tail.
Do modern pterosaurs ever attack humans? For most of those flying creatures, never. But beware of the large exceptional ones, those rare pterodactyls that might, on occasion, attack someone somewhere on the planet. This is a memorial for a fisherman who died many years ago on a small island in northern Papua New Guinea. I never met the man. As I understand, he died many years before I was on Umboy Island and many miles to the north. Yet the tragedy of his death may help us come to some kind of understanding that may help us each do something to make this world a better place. Over the past 17 years, I've received hundreds of reports directly from the eyewitnesses themselves, persons who have encountered apparent non-extinct pterosaurs. Only about 1% of those accounts included any indication that would even hint at the possibility that a dinosaur bird or anything like a primitive flying creature was in a mood to harm a human. Stay with me to near the end of this video to get details on a terrifying encounter a teenage girl had with a huge flying creature at night in Virginia.
And then out the back of its head was a crest.
So it was directly overhead before it flew off into the cloud.
Leathery, had the claws on the wings.
I was convinced that there were living pterosaurs in that part of the world. We went and interviewed Harriet, the mother, and heard about her sighting from a very short distance.
I saw something that I had only before witnessed in books. I didn't know there were such creatures at all. But it had a big wingspan. It had a very sharp, long beak. I never saw it open, but a long, narrow beak.